Thank you for dialing in to BodyMoves. This week's class is the art of finding balance and keeping it. Some people call it standing over your hip. You can do it in stand is the preference. You may want a little bit of something off to your side for a little touch of your finger to help with your balance, like a counter or back of a chair, or it can be also modified to be done in sit. I'm Dotti Harness-Foster, a Feldenkrais practitioner, and this lesson is ideal for people recovering from injuries or trying to avoid them. Whether you have had feet, ankle, knee, hip issues, spine issues, this will ripple through the sole of your feet all the way through the top of your head. And we'll also be exploring, of course, our balance and a bit of fall prevention. This lesson is based on the Feldenkrais method. It's an awareness through movement lesson. We sometimes abbreviate that by ATM, which is a system of gentle movements that help get you coordinated, organized, and most importantly, some self-awareness, like really putting your thinking cap on. So before we start, I want to thank everybody for dialing in and checking audio, video. During the class, you are muted, and let's make sure that we did that. If you have intermittent bandwidth, the videos coming in and out, you can turn off the video. My verbal description is probably going to be enough to guide you through. That invite link that I send to everybody, use the calendar feature. It will prompt you. I've tried to bypass the need for a passcode. And at the end, I'll show you my website where I have the audio, the handout, and everything. So let's get started. Remember, you are in charge of ease and comfort. And this is a one-sided lesson, which I'll explain more, and you're going to use your most available side. So I'll help you discover that also. So let's get started by, you're going to choose to sit or stand. I'm going to back up a little bit. And if you choose to stand, note how you are standing. How is the weight grounded into the floor? Do you tend to put more weight into one foot than the other? Now, if you are sitting, that is, you're just on your seat, forward in your seat, wiggle it around and feel your two sits bones. Your hands are on your lap and you're exploring, just like we are in standing, how do you find your center? What parts of you are really holding on to keep your balance? And I know these are a lot of really strange questions, but that helps you tune in to yourself, how you're feeling at the beginning of the lesson. And walk around a little bit. I know we're in our living rooms, kitchen, so you don't have much room to walk around, but I want you to imagine if you fell, what direction would you most likely fall? And what would you do to prevent that fall? What would your arms do, your legs do, your head do, your torso do in order to prevent that fall? Those of you who are walking around, come to a stance, seated, you're sitting, and lift one foot and then set it back down and repeat that several times, noticing what foot you chose to lift And what leg is your standing leg? And then try the other, switching to the other side, lifting up one leg. And then go back and forth. You're testing out your most available side. Where do you feel most solid and most grounded? For those of you who are sitting, feel free to put your hands underneath your sits bones at the base of your pelvis, and you're tilting yourself from one side of your seat to the other. What side do you feel most solid? We can fall right out of a chair, so we all have a preference. And when you're done with that, I'm going to bring in Skinny Rick. Okay, so first of all, those of you who choose to do this lesson in sit, you're going to be feeling your sits bones. Okay, the camera's zooming in to show the base of the pelvis. Right here is our sits bones. And we feel those when we've sat on a hard surface for too long. And I want you to feel those. And notice how rounded they are also. And we have two of them, male or female, we got them. And I think of this area as being like a triangle. My spine at the top of the vertex and two sits bones down here. Now, for those of us standing, I'm going to turn Skinny Rick around. Feel the side of your hips. When we say feel your hips, we often put our hands right here on the outside of our hips like this. And this is what we're feeling, is this bony part, this greater trochanter that sticks out in all of us. But what is cool is this greater trochanter goes into a ball and socket. If you've had a hip replacement, you know that area well. And it is embedded in several inches. But what's fascinating and what this lesson really targets is the connection of all the muscles that go from the foot through the knee, up into the hip, into the hip socket, into and across the front of your pelvis and across the back, connecting into your spine. So we're going to really be dialing into how we move about the hip, hinging over that hip. Okay. So our first step is, if you're standing, choose your most available leg, okay? And your weight is on that most available leg. I am going to show you, I'm going to stand on my left. My right toe is just out for a little bit of balance. My left hand is on the back of a chair, a counter, maybe a wall, just for a little bit of balance, okay? And I brought in a prop, my ski. Key to this lesson is we are going to be tilting ourselves over the standing hip. So from my toe to the top of my head is a tilt. Okay, it's not a bending like that. You are straight from the toe to the top of the head tilt. Okay, in sitting, that looks like, again, my left is my supporting hip. My right toe is off to the side and I can still tilt like that. Okay, now it's your turn. Okay, so come to your starting positions with the weight in your standing leg. The other toe is out to the side. And tilt yourself over your standing hip. And then come back to your center. It's a small movement. Your toe is out to the side and you're tilting over your standing hip. Repeat this several times, really making sure that you have the image of an arrow or a ski that goes from your toe out the top of your head. Notice where you hinge. And in this lesson, the less you do, the more you will feel. Let gravity have your arm. It dangles down toward the floor. And notice that point that you were tilting or hinging over. And let's take a rest. Now you are in charge of ease and comfort. And to me, this lesson is a real, you'll feel those muscles in your hip. So we're all at different levels of what we can handle. 1 or 2 times could be enough for you. So be real easy and gentle on yourself. So I'm going to show you what the next movement is going to look like. If you're standing, you're going to stay on the same side this whole lesson. We're going to tilt ourselves over, and I'm going to call, I'm standing on my left leg. My left arm is here to support me. The non-weight bearing arm and leg are off to the side. Okay, so I'm going to tilt, and this arm comes and slaps down. And then I come back to my starting point. I tilt, arm comes out to the side and slaps, and I come back to the starting point. Okay, now it's your turn. Get set up, stand on your standing leg. The other toe is out to the side. Tilt, lift your arm, and drop your arm, coming back to your starting point. And repeat this movement several times. Noticing the little distinctions. How does this change your balance? Do you sense a bit of difference in the support over your standing leg when your arm is out? After all, if you were to catch yourself in a fall, you probably put your arm out somehow. And let's take a break. Those of you standing, shake out your hips. And I'm going to show you the next movement while you take a little rest. It's very similar. I'm going to first demonstrate in sit. My standing hip is my left. There is a straight line. As I tilt over, my leg is going to go out just a bit and then plop back down to center. My leg goes out and plops down to center. Let me show you what that looks like in standing. My starting position, my leg goes out just a bit more and then plops back to center. Out and plop. Okay, your turn. So you start same side, a one-sided lesson. Those of you standing may have a chair off to your side. The other toe is just out a bit on the diagonal for a little bit of support. And tilt yourself to the side, hinging over that standing hip. Then in the other leg lifts, and then drop that leg towards your midline. You may sense that the leg is slapping the inside of your standing leg. Tilt, your arm dangles with gravity. The leg is out, and then drop the leg towards your midline. And with your leg out, do you feel a difference in how you hinge? Oftentimes, if we're trying to grab our balance to prevent a fall, one leg goes out. How does that feel moving over your weighted leg, your weighted foot, your weighted seat? And let's take a rest. Shake it out. And while you do that, the next step is we continue to add layers. So you can choose to stay with what we've done so far, or we can combine the dropping of the arm and the leg. So in standing, my starting position, I'm bearing my weight on my left, my arm, my non-bearing arm and leg go up as I tilt, and then I drop both at the same time. In sit, that's going to look like this. Okay, it's your turn. Standing on your standing leg, the other toe is out. Tilt and drop both your arm and your leg, slapping your leg to the other leg. And repeat this several times, lifting your arm and your leg and then slapping it down. Let gravity be your friend. Let it slap down. Oftentimes, if we're trying to prevent a fall, everything is your arms and your legs, everything is involved. Notice how you hinge over that standing leg. And you're keeping that image of a ski pole going through you so that you're tilting and hinging over that standing hip. And when you're done, shake it out. While you take a rest, I'm going to show you the next step. Okay, in sitting, we are going to be sliding our pelvis back and forth. So in sit, you're going to be tilting your pelvis back and forth. I'm rocking myself from one sit bone to the other. Okay? And in standing, you're going to be on the same side, same standing leg, same toe is out to the side, and you're going to be sliding your pelvis right and left, side to side in space. So we're not tilting, it's just the pelvis that is moving. So it's a very different movement of the leg coming into that hip joint, different muscles that need to coordinate across our pelvis and to the backside. Now it's your turn. Okay, so if you're standing, weight bearing, a toe is out, think of sliding your pelvis over to the right and to the left. It's a very small movement. It also requires enormous coordination of the muscles that come up from your foot, your shin, across your knee, your thigh, up into your pelvis. Notice as your hips go one way, the head wants to go the other. As your hip goes to the left, the head wants to go just a bit to the right. It's so slight, but it's your body's internal desire to balance. And let's take a break. Shake it out. We're going to finish this. So the next movement here, for those of you who are sitting, is you're going to tilt your pelvis forward and round your back. When you come forward, more weight goes into the feet. You're looking up along the wall in the direction of the ceiling and rounding yourself back. For those of you standing, I'm going to turn sideways so you can see my pelvis. My pelvis is going to go forward and back. And I'm going to exaggerate a little bit here so you see when my pelvis goes forward, my head wants to go back, and I'm really exaggerating. And my pelvis goes back, my head wants to go forward. It's just part of my system trying to maintain balance. So now it's your turn. So come to your standing, same standing leg. Your foot is out to the side. Bring your pelvis forward and back. Forward and back. Notice as you bring your pelvis forward, your head wants to go back. So in many ways, the head is moving opposite of your pelvis. As the pelvis goes back, the head comes forward. And let's take a break. While you take a break, our next step is combining some of those movements, but I want to read you a little excerpt in the book that I have in the chat that I highly recommend, The Brain's Way of Healing, Remarkable Discoveries and Recoveries from the Frontiers of Neuroplasticity. And the author here says, even the smallest movement in one part of the body involves the entire body. In a person who is capable of efficient, graceful movements, the entire body organizes itself as a whole to do the movement, no matter how small. And our next movement is small. So come back to your starting position, standing leg, toe out. Now take your pelvis in a diagonal way. So your pelvis comes forward to that toed foot and then back on the diagonal. Do that a few times, repeating. Noticing the movement in your ribs, your chest, your head, and then begin taking your hip around in a circular movement. Notice the direction that you chose to make your circle. And then change the direction of your circle. Notice as when your pelvis comes forward, your head is back. As your pelvis is to the right, the head is to the left. Pelvis back, head forward, pelvis left. Your head is right. Those of you sitting are making a circular movement that you feel in your sits bones. And when you need a break, take a break. So this one really talks to all the muscles from our knee, our thigh, up through our belly and into our spine. So I think it's a lot of breaks is needed and to shake it out. Okay, as we come to the end of this lesson, we're going to be combining things. We're going to play around with this circular movement and dial it in smaller and smaller. So if you're in sit, you're going to be taking your pelvis in a circular movement. And in standing, you're going to be doing the same thing. So come to your position. Stand bearing your weight on your standing side. The other toe is out. Now take your pelvis in a circular movement, very similar to what we just did. But I want you to think about the circle in the bottom of your foot. So as your pelvis goes forward, more weight is in the ball of the feet. As you take your pelvis to the left, there's more weight on the outside edge of your foot. The pelvis goes back, more weight in the heel. And structurally, what we feel most balanced over is really the front of the heel. So begin making this circular movement, not only on the sole of your feet, but your pelvis. Your head is also making a circle, and make this spiral circular movement smaller and smaller and smaller till you dial into a place where you feel really tall and structurally supported from the front of the heel through your leg, your hip, and up the top of your head. And when you find that, come to stand and shake it out. Now we end a lesson how we started. So we started by comparing and sort of discovering what our most available side is. So whether you're seated or standing, lift one leg and then lift the other. Continue doing that movement of lifting it, discovering for yourself. I'm in, yeah. And walk around a little bit. And imagine a fall, just like we did at the beginning. What would you do in yourself to prevent that fall? How would your hands, how would your legs, what would your head do in order to prevent that fall? Coming back to your standing position with your weight evenly distributed between both your feet or both of your sits bones. Where is it that you feel tallest? Where your posture feels dynamic? You're looking out at the horizon. And as you begin to walk again, propel yourself forward, looking forward. testing out your balance. So this lesson has been one-sided. I encourage you, it's a bit different, but I encourage you to stay with this. Observe today how this one-sided lesson moves through you throughout the day. Now, I provide you with notes and recording, and the second time you do it, I would encourage you to do it on the other side if that's available to you. So I talked about a book. I highly recommend this book. It is The Brain's Way of Healing, Remarkable Discoveries and Recoveries from the Frontiers of Neuroplasticity. I have it in the chat. I'll also have it on my website. And if you feel this class has been helpful, be heartful and consider a donation to, it's brought to you totally free from the American Parkinson's Disease Association, the Northwest chapter, and the Homer Council on the Arts. I'd like to show you this video is of African women walking. Notice the movement in their arms, the sway in their hips, their head is moving about. That movement goes from the sole of their feet up through their legs, their hips, their torso. This small little gyro moving so that they can carry the baskets on top of their waist. Everything is involved on top of their head. Beautiful to watch. So we are going to do this lesson again on Saturday, 9:30 Alaska time, the art of finding balance and keeping it, and balancing over the hip, whatever you want to call it. Some people call it the hip grind. So so here is the book covers. The paperback is a different cover than the hardback, but it was published in, I think, 2017, so it's now in paperback, so a little bit more accessible for everybody. Our local library has a copy of it. It's quite popular, so you may find it at the library's digital and paper. So I also want to share, I'm going to try to screen share now, my website so that you know where some of the resources are. So here is the homepage of Insightful BodyMoves website. I'm going to scroll down, and I keep on the website. The handout from last week's lesson was mobilizing the pelvis. You'll see that I have 2 audios there. I'll soon be putting this week's audio on there and taking off that handout and putting on this week's handout. So I try to keep this up to date. Also, there is the book that I just recommended. Okay, so that's the end of the lesson. I'm going to hang out, answer any questions, any thoughts that you have about this class